Welcome back to Tom's Road to 25, and it's been a rough patch. 3 games in a row have slipped through his fingers on Star Watcher. A new to the game adjacent player crumbled way too fast, giving them VIP tickets to Tom's Eco. Then on Glitters, Tom went full Eco mode, but the team was bleeding on every front. And then finally on Supreme Isthmus, he tried a sneaky duck maneuver that just didn't stick. Maybe it's a sign he needs more practice in role-playing positions, because right now that road to 25 is looking a little bumpy after 9 straight wins, but then the 3 losses hurt. Let's see if he can turn this one around.
This is AllReasonNoLogic's road to OS 25. Join us as Tom battles to double his OS starting at 12. Hit subscribe and leave your comments and tips. To the battlefield commanders.
You're joining us on All That Smolders, which is one of the new iterations of All That Glitters. What they've done is they've increased the high ground in the canyons, creating quite an interesting little battlefield that tends to end up on a bit of a diagonal in the middle. Tank Tom taking pole position on this one, jumping right up the front on that high ground. Hopefully we can find something that is going... Hopefully we can find some gaps for him to run through. These little lanes can be a nightmare to defend or a wealth of opportunity to push through. Also, just by the way, he lost because he went ducks. Ducks are bad.
Can confirm that was the entire reason.
Yep, ducks are bad.
Did you actually manage to utilize them, or was it a team loss? Or was it your lane? Do you remember?
The ducks definitely didn't do anything by the time I got to ducks.
Yeah, okay. But the front line, did you guys lose via front line, or did you lose via that C that you were playing?
We'll say both, because I think my C ended up shelling the front line and then they collapsed from there.
Okay, yeah, that does hurt if you can't defend the there's like a nice little gulf that you can get into in Supreme Isthmus, and the T1 destroyers can usually reach that front line player and take out some of their wind and metal.
Some bad luck on your aggression in this game, unfortunately, Tank Tom. Both your ticks were sniped out by a grunt that happened to be walking past, and then a really well-placed LLT that locks off this entire side of the map to that early aggression. Anyone who is playing on this map, that is not a bad place to put the LLT. As long as you completely cover that entrance, it means that you're not going to have anything slipping through on that side in the early game.
Similar positioning for the blue player.
Where you can position that LLT where you cover an entire choke point, and it meant that I basically went, cool, can't get through there, there's units in the way, I'm gonna basically hold up, and at that point I knew that more leaks were unlikely to make it through.
Yeah.
So it was spend the couple of minutes you've got now to try and build up some of that eco, and then look at holding the front of this cliff hill.
It's
and holding the front of this cliff is a critically important thing to do. If you can get a gauntlet up, you can really affect the entire play of the match, but you can also make yourself a bit of a target as well. Very important to get the mexes as you move forward, and to get those defenses and units up and running. There is a little bit of metal to reclaim around the map, though not a huge amount. The more you can get from the very front line early on, the better. You can just work your way back from there, provided you're holding those entrances. For those of you that are wondering, the actual areas that you can traverse is only those 3 ramps. Everything else is not traversable by regular bots. You can get up there, of course, with spiders and other all-terrain vehicles.
Okay, very interesting seeing the 2 highest ranked players. We've got a 29 and a 28 in the opposite positions. You're up against the highest player on the red team, the red player KU Wag. So you got your work cut out for you in this one, Tom. You are backed up by a 12 OS player in your lane. They've got the lowest in their lane, so maybe a little bit of advantage there, having not as much experience on the backup position. T2 is coming up for yellow, and then similarly on your team. Actually, not so similar. No T2 yet. Looks like we're a little behind on eco from your side. And you can see that on the top right of the screen, few percentage in the advantage for both energy and metal on the red team.
Does
One of
look
the things
like
I made sure that I did this game was get that construction tower up in my base before moving out, and I've now got a LLT on each of the main entrances to cover anything that comes pushing up. And you can see that we've got a skirmishing force on its way out at the
Probably
moment.
the first big
Try and see.
engagement of any sort. A nice little push through here, so a little bit of coordination. By the looks, you can see those two cursors jumping around, trying to take out those mexes. It is really smart if you can attack in groups. So you can see you're bridging off from this player here, the lime green, Berlin. I think they're going to lose their units to those incisors, but having destroyed a few of those mexes definitely makes this raid worthwhile. It's only a handful of bots going down. You're going to get another one by the looks of it as well, if not two.
well, one of the metal is important here, but one of the other critical things that happened was there were two builders moving their way up the front. I believe one was pink. Oh no, they were both red, and those were both taken out. And that does offset a mistake that you've made back here, or at least the mexes do. 5 minutes in, you're still missing one of your mexes, and you've only just gotten two of those ones down. Yeah. There's a lot to do on this map, but definitely do need to be getting those as early as possible. That extra metal will help you tremendously.
Probably actually irregular to what I just drew. Send one bot that way to get these two, and then you want to send one bot out to get those two at the start, or even your commander. Get the commander up there
sent
quickly.
One bot forward to get the LT up, and then he's made his way back.
Yeah, so just one bot that really does make a massive difference. You think about 2.5 metal per second for probably a good 2-3 minutes.
3 minutes. 3 minutes or so. That's a nice solid almost 500 metal difference from having that.
Yeah, huge
400 metal. You
think about that, that's that's like a fifth of the way to a T2 lab. So really important to get every mix up. Speaking of, look at this player here on your team, a little bit of lack of experience. 3 chevron there. You'd actually think at 3 chev.
That's a little far back for to grab a gauntlet for that player.
A lot of mixes, 4 mixes mini. Where's the gauntlet?
Oh god, yeah, I just saw those mixes.
Yeah, right. Wow. That's the front line is here. You're gonna get the 3.2 on your side, and then build your LLTs in front of it at a minimum. I mean, you want to take even more if you can deny your opponents. 3.2, perfect.
Jumping back to Tank Tom, this is one of the things that the order that you do things is very important. As you can see, Tank Tom's trying to build a gauntlet. This bot had to walk all the way from the base in order to get up here and do it, and that's all because of the build direction that the first T1 constructor went in. By moving forward, building the turret, then building the mexes back, there was nothing in place to get this up, and by having it, and because it wasn't able to start, there was a large amount of dead time. The metal has built up, and the enemy has gotten a decent position, which likely would have been able to be pushed back. So your build order can be very critical, even just in these small things. A lot of these units are very slow to traverse the map.
Yeah, really important to, as a team, all these little decisions you make really impact the outcome of the game. The metal's still sitting in the favour of the red team convincingly this early in the game. 8% might not seem much on paper, but it's quite a bit when you add it up over time.
One of the other things to point out, unfortunately, Tank Tom, you've stalled out in your base. You had nothing. You've only just grabbed a unit to start building in the back line, and you've just grabbed your constructor to build, but there was a good solid 30 to 40 seconds where nothing was going on in the base. And it's this sort of time where the energy scaling and the unit scaling makes a really big difference. And particularly with the sort of thing that was going on here with some light skirmishing between rocket bots and getting the gauntlet up, the frontline attention was definitely a little overtuned.
Yeah, the gauntlet is up now though, and red does not have one for himself, nor does pink. You can see over here blue has a defensive gauntlet down here, which is probably going to deny the maroon player from getting their own, so I do like that you've got that up. And people, we do get quite critical in these reviews of these games, and that is because this is a road to 25. It's all about analysing all the decisions made to improve play. So jump in those comments and hold nothing back. If you think that there is some fundamental differences that Tom could make in his play to improve the decisions that he makes, or maybe some tactics for specific maps, get in the comments, because we do look at every single comment and we do take on all of the information. T2 already coming out for red. This isn't looking fantastic.
I know that
for your
some of the
team.
feedback that I got, I wasn't super happy to read it, but looking at the replays and working through what I was told certainly made a pretty big difference to my road to 25. I tightened up a lot of my macro and micro because of that, and we end up in a much better position because of it. It's also one of the reasons why we do suggest watching your own replays if you are struggling to get out of those low OS brackets. Compare what you're doing to players in that same game that are doing very well, and also compare what the person in your opposite position is doing if they did better than you, and try to just make those incremental changes. One of the incremental changes that you can do, and one which is Tank Tom is doing quite well over here, is manual firing the gauntlet. Just remember, when you have a radar and you don't have pinpointers, which you won't have for quite a while, you do not have perfect vision. The dots are going to be slightly different to where you expect them to be. And so if you leave it to automatically fire, it can just spend its whole time firing into random spots. What you've got to do is pick out your targets. You know there are going to be mechs here, so just pop 2 shots onto each mech and it will be destroyed. Try to move your fire around, and if you notice anything particularly weird popping up, just give it a couple of shots. If you look at Tank Tom's player view right now,
I can see there's something over there. I know that I've gone through and cleared out all of the red defenses that we had seen previously and hit all of these mexes, so there shouldn't be anything else there at the moment. That unit's going out there for some scouting information just to confirm what I think I know.
Yeah, you did see you see that gauntlet coming down, so target firing that. Yes, you are.
It's going to make a big difference. Something just to also bear in mind when you're target firing something, if you actually target fire the unit and then it goes into the fog of war, then it will change targeting priorities. What you need to do is target the ground.
Yeah, precisely. He's going to just keep pinging away there. How's your eco going? You have been given T2. They are going around. There's nothing wrong with this. I'd just be putting any extra builders onto it. I wouldn't be building the units at the same time. As the first recommendation of this, you want to put all the build power you can to get these 3 mexes up as quick as possible, while that energy is low. Sorry, while that metal is low.
Good identification of the radar jammer. From my player view, I could see the icon. It's taking a while to go down because of the healing that it's receiving. Once it goes down, you'll have vision of what's going on over there. Something which we've discussed because of a game that is coming up shortly after this one. The ability to affect somebody else's lane can sometimes be more valuable than the ability to affect your own. By shutting this down and getting damage on, you're actually protecting blue, and considering that blue is... In this game, it's not so important because blue's gone heavily defensive. I don't think they're in much risk of breaking to T1. But in other games, you can massively change things. So just because you're in your lane doesn't actually mean that you have to follow exactly your lane for an attack avenue. You need to make sure your lane doesn't lose, but you don't have to necessarily make sure that your lane wins if you see a better chance.
I find more often than not, if you work with the players next to you and hit whichever one is least defended, open up a space and then go through, that's often more effective.
Yeah.
With the gauntlet on the front line, there it goes down. You got some arbiters against you. With the gauntlet, you want to build probably a construction turret behind it just to keep it healed. Also, you want to keep any sort of build power around there. Your commander near it. Where is the commander? Just building wind. Yeah, really important you see all these other players, commanders on the front line. Keep them up there as much as possible because it could be the difference between something like that going down. You are rezzing it, which I like to see, rather than reclaiming it, because it is such a critical unit. It is something that can take on these Sheldons if vision is given, and it will be given whilst the CV is damaged.
Oof, bombers coming in, really good play out of the red air player, identifying a real gap in the available, in the lack of air defenses, essentially blunting a lot of this attack. Good call walking in and grabbing that gauntlet. It would have been a nightmare to deal with, but taking a lot of damage for it because the T2 player behind you had to stop. Very slow reaction from the air player on your team. because those 5 bombers have essentially stopped most of 2 or 3 players worth of pushes here, which is a
Now the
big
response comes
problem.
out, but at this point, the air's basically done everything it was going to do.
Yep. Do manage to successfully push things, push them back, but unfortunately, with so much damage being done to your units, actually, you do have those res bots there. That's really good. I didn't notice this when I skimmed this before. Those res bots going to grab as much of the metal as possible, and even if you lose an engagement like this but gain the metal, then you essentially win the engagement.
Not bad.
Yeah,
Pushing
because
on the
right
right-hand
now-
side.
And this is where having your macro under wraps is really important. With this 2000 metal on the front line, if you stopped unit production, whacked a T2 lab down and went from there, I think you'd be in a very good position. But you've fallen a little bit behind with your build turrets, and also a little bit behind in your energy production as well. 15 minutes in, you're only producing about 500 on average wind. A couple of solars, considering that you've got such a large metal bank, with those additional build power and then going into that T2 lab, I think would have put you in a really strong position here. Instead, you're stuck facing Azar on the front line with a couple of maces.
Just want to point out the eco as this commander might inevitably fall. No, good pull from everyone there to defend. Metal was actually in the favour of the blue team for a little bit there, and that was just because although eco is not going fantastically for your team in terms of the eco player, E2 was handed out quite well. And a lot of the mixers, apart from maybe this one player here, who honestly I just don't really know what they're doing in this game, most of the T2s have been upgraded in the back line. You can see all upgraded through there. Maybe this green player. Red back in the lead now, but it was good to see that your T2s got handed out a bit faster. Oh, is commander going to go down? No. That could have been very decisive. Things are looking pretty good on your front. There is now a Mammoth and a SAR and a Tremor. So very dangerous units, especially all together. What is your thought process at this stage? You're going to T2. What units are you going to go for?
I can't actually remember what I was planning at this stage. I knew that my army at the front, which was basically providing the meat shield for the T2 that had come out of the player behind me, is rapidly declining.
Yeah.
I seem to remember with this game, I looked back every so often and was like, they're all dead. Not sure what that happened to. Anyway, moving on.
This gauntlet is back up, which is going to keep all these mixers denied. I don't think you're getting through this Mammoth unless the commander got up there. What the red player is doing quite well is they're just doing a complete transition into a bit more eco, and then they're going to go back into units. Looks like spam's coming out. I like to see this actually early spam. Prey?
Early spam is going to be quite dangerous, but also quite draining. If you're going to be doing that, you have to know that the rest of your team is going to be able to pick up the eco slack, because these units are sacrificial units, particularly if you're playing as Cortex, where you're going to be putting the grunt out instead of something like a tick. And this is where I think the position that you're in, Tank Tom, right now is not a great position. You've still got your T1 lab, your build power is quite low, your energy is quite low. You're still building your T2 mexes. You're still in that phase where you're transitioning over to the front. And one of the biggest problems that you have is actually the blue player next to you. They've built this line so hard and it's so far back that every time you fight, you're fighting pink and red.
Yeah.
And it's offset somewhat because of the green player behind you, but it doesn't change the fact that you're still fighting two players, and blue is effectively holding a choke point that it's not far enough forward for this map. You can't be this far back.
The difference in the damage dealt numbers at the moment. I'm sitting up at 50, a few of the others are at 60,000, and the blue player next to me is at 4,500.
They've just tapped that 5,000, which is just...
Yeah.
Absolutely not what you need when you're facing their best player. As soon as you identify where their strong players are, because the colors will always be the same. Just if that hasn't been something that someone's told you, the blue player will always be number 1, the green player will always be number 2. Similarly, the red player will always be number 1, the yellow player will always be number 2. If you are against one of these higher level players, you actually need to support the person who's doing it, particularly if they're suffering behind. In this case, it's a 11 OS difference. But what's actually happening is that the 28 OS player is 10 OS difference. The 28 OS player is being supplemented by their 11 OS player, which just isn't going to work out particularly well.
This blue player having to be told to come over here. You can see the lines drawn. The grunt tactic with these SARs and all these arbiters is actually working quite well. Really good vision and a lot of splash damage. Unfortunately, you had a bunch of welders that went down when they were all grouped. And you have gone into very expensive fat boys, 1,200 a pop or something.
I don't disagree with the fat boys in this situation. With what you're defending against, they have the range, they have the tankiness, and they have the damage, but they need to be supported by the right things. In this case, that would be and in that case, what's needed is the welders spread out to deal with these grunts. But if you're going to be going those fat boys, a bit of manual fire is almost necessary, because if they're wasting their shot on a single grunt, they're not getting their value worth, in which case you would end up being slightly better with a different unit. However, they were built before the spam arrived, so no question about that. What the problem is right now is the build order. Build order is sitting at 5 welders, 3 hounds, and a fat boy. That's not going to close this gap anytime soon.
I think.
So it's not the be at this stage.
Right now, you want to be. It's 20 minutes into the game. Your energy should probably be about the 2,000 mark.
Exactly, and then you would be able to build the snipers to deal with them. If you aren't able to build the snipers, you need something that's reasonably long ranged, but a lot cheaper than what you're doing. The hounds can work, but they're incredibly fragile, and I do believe the recluse have slightly longer range than no, they don't. The recluse have less range. Yeah. So it would actually be the hound in this situation is best. But again, this goes back to that build order and the the macro in the background. If you'd been able to get a fusion up by this stage, you would have the ability to defend this with snipers, and with snipers and welders, you would be able to defend this quite easily, because the welders could take care of a lot of the grunts, and the snipers could pop down fire onto anything that goes into that is in the T2 frame of mind.
I'll try and jump in here just with when to do that. So there was a period in time where you had units, these grunts weren't on their way yet. You didn't know about them. There was just a mammoth in this pocket here, just one unit, and you kind of stalled. You had the T2 lab out and you started building those welders, and T1 lab was building units as well. The player behind you had a fusion up and had gone into their T2 units. What you should have done is, as soon as you had their T2 units in front of your eco, when they were sitting up here, the group of Sheldons, that's when you should have reclaimed the advanced lab, the T1 lab, and that would have paid for about 60% of your first fusion. And then, yeah, you could have even reclaimed some of your win to get the last bits of metal for that. That would be the timing that I would do it at.
Now, just jumping into what Red's doing at the moment, they have this army of res bots that they are microing, sometimes for resing units, sometimes for repairing units. But if you look at what they're actually repairing, they're repairing things like bulls. They're resurrecting things like bulls and mammoths, which means that the hard targets that you're having trouble dealing with, they're just amplifying that amount of damage. If you are ever in a position to do it, that sort of thing can be absolutely critical when it comes to breaking an attack, especially if you're spending all of your metal on this mass grunt production. You have to be as efficient as possible with what you have available to you. In this case, that is res.
Well, are we about to see a Commander D gun on these mammoths? I dare say the commander's going to die if this happens.
But I mean, that's exactly the sort of thing that you have to be ready to do, because you're taking off. Again, this is information that we can see that can't be seen from the player perspective. But Red right now is. But you can make an educated guess with how many grunts Red is sending across. Red does not have the ability to produce T2 units. By degunning his mammoths, this siege is essentially stuck to T1 units, which means that welders are going to be absolutely fine to clean this up, because there's nothing behind them to actually kill the welders.
I'm just going to jump in. you've had about 5,000 metal in the bank for the last 2.5 minutes.
Oof.
Dish it off to whoever's low. Dish it off to someone that knows how to spend it. So probably to the opposite side of the map. This player here could have got their advanced fusion up with that metal really quickly. If you can't spend the unit because you're being assaulted and you have to focus on building units, drag the sliders down or pick who you send, which I would do in the lower lobbies. Definitely pick who you're sending it to rather than just letting it overflow to your team. Good to see the players here coming around and helping support this line with these starlights. I don't know if they're the right units, especially with starlights that they're against, but it's good to see the players rallying in this lane where a lot of the pressure is coming from the red team.
And again, this is just one of those things where hindsight is 2020. You've got the res bots out grabbing all that metal at the front, but you're full on metal. Your problem right now is build power and energy. You're barely managing to keep up energy-wise with what you're building. That means that it's time to whack down a fusion almost, not regardless of what's going on the front line, but the front line is somewhat taken care of. Not anymore, considering, because those starlights were on a move command, but would not go too far into that. That is some low OS play, but it is what it is. You have to rectify that sort of situation, because right now you're going to slowly bleed and you need to turn that around into something. And in this sort of position, the defense you essentially need is sniper welder. The welders need to be able to tank some shots from those Zars. They have to be able to kill the small stuff, and you need to be able to manually target those Zars.
Got a pull of fiends here trying to take out these starlights, but I dare say these SARs are going to just take them down in 1 or 2 shots.
Yep, two grouped up, but also the Zar is 4 Zars, is 6 Zars, is just crazy. That is a lot to deal with.
Really good with these res bots. Res bots are so best unit in the game. Yeah, they are just resurrecting stuff instantly there. I don't really know what to do in the current. If you were to jump into the game right now, Prey, what would you do if you were Tom or the player behind Tom?
I would yell at the purple player to give me one of his fusions and to give me his army.
Yeah.
Because if he's not going to micro that, you're in big trouble. I could, with these units, I could do a lot of damage here, but I think we just saw the savior that Tank Tom needs.
Whoa, some nuke just happened.
A lack of anti-nuke just completely stuffed the team, and I'm just having a look at the player view. It wasn't a completely blind nuke. You can actually see that some scouting information has been gotten through the pink and red base.
I think air went through here previously.
But one of the things you do see is no anti-nuke, and part of the reason for that is because the anti-nuke itself wasn't spotted. But if you have this much vision, you can kind of guess that maybe there isn't, as it seems like the green player decided it was worth a ping, and that's really closed up the back of this map. But there are still Zars to deal with, and this is where I think the green players made a big mistake continuing to go into those fiends and nothing else. They might be good for a counter push, but you have to get through those Zars. And one of the things that this is where Cortex and Armada differ. If you are running that Cortex side of things, in a siege situation, especially against Zars, Arbiters are ludicrously good, as are Mammoths. If there's ever an opportunity to get a Mammoth to the front line and some Arbiters up there, you'll be able to help hold against Zars in a really big way.
Very good point. Marauder push right now, don't want to miss this. You've got your commander coming across, which is really good to see. So hopefully these get cleaned up. This is dangerous though. This is a lot of Marauders. And there's 2 Razorbacks as well. I'd be actually ignoring the Marauders and... Oh no, Tom! No, Tom!
I accidentally control-D'd my commander and then had to undo it, and then at that point I was...
Oh no, are you in this one?
I mean, it doesn't look good right now.
Pretty rough.
I thought we don't
especially
cast
considering
losses.
that the air player is dealing with an air raid as well, so they can't even come in to help you.
Oh wow, there's
Question
even
is,
atomic
how well do
bombs.
Marauders go against Fiends, and how well will they go against the blue player, because they've been split in half, which might be the saving grace. Nope, those are Razorbacks.
Razorbacks gonna win this.
Razorbacks in the green player's base, and we have the Marauders kicking through the purple player's base as well. Big chain reaction in the purple base. Doesn't quite get the T2 conversion, thankfully, and has been cleaned up by Marauders of from the blue team, as well as those pulsars. This is you know what? Do you know what the good thing is about all of this? There is no follow-up. This has been cleaned up, and there is no follow-up that can come out of the red player right now. They got so wiped out that they're just trying to get established yet again.
Just sent,
which means
interrupted.
What just happened there?
Oh,
Bombers.
Bombers got through. Wow, I was distracted by the nuke that got intercepted and Hey, okay, I see what's happening here. I thought you guys had lost that when those got through, but
Mutually assured destruction.
we've got another push coming through though. There is, I mean, air's gonna save you here if air is done right. Do we have any shurikens in the midst here? We've got some bombers. It looks like a last-ditched attempt now for the red team to come through with what's left, and only a handful of Marauders. Oh, actually, we've got Starlights. Perfect answer. Perfect answer.
If they are used correctly. So far, I have only seen this player use move commands on these Starlights.
And they might be perfectly timed to just show their faces over this hill. If the T3 comes over, they might get cleaned up. Yikes.
Now, one of the things we should actually talk about, what is it that Tank Tom needs to do in the situation he's in right now? Getting yourself back into the game is a bit of an art form, because you will have more metal and more energy than you did at the start of the game. And the question becomes, what do you do? And the answer is you essentially macro up as much as you can until you can get spam lines to help your team, and then make an assessment if you go into those spam lines and then push through.
I would just res everything.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. Getting the res bots up is a really good call, but one of the hardest things is the positioning that you're having to res on is the contested ground. Yeah, and so that's where you have to make a determination on whether or not you're going to res in this ground and try to get up that little bit faster, or if you're going to just try rebuilding from somewhere else. And in this situation, with what I saw coming up behind you, which is those Starlights, those Marauders, I think you're in a safe enough position to move to reclaim and res where you are. You're also making a pretty good decision trying to grab yourself a couple of those Marauders for defense with the res. Unfortunately for you, you're just in such a low power position that the reclaiming the resing is actually stopping you from getting those res bots out. What you definitely need right now is to either find a wreckage of a constructor, which I can't see one of, so I don't think there is, or just focus into getting one of those out, getting some wind down, and asking the teams like, hey, hey, player with X number of fusions, can I have your wind?
Yeah.
Bust yourself back into the game, get those build turrets out, mass out those res units. There's so much army here. I think there's over 20 Marauders here, which could actually punch through in, not necessarily in front of you because of those bulls, but to the left or to the left-hand side, could punch through quite easily there. And
you're just saying it here out of the blue player how easy he's getting three Marauders through.
Oh no. And that is a big problem.
There you go.
So the big defense line in front of you has been nuked, another clutch nuke. That anti-nuke was in the queue but was not built just yet, and this is why building outside of your nuke defenses, even if that's going to save you a bit of time, can be a big problem, particularly if you've just lost a huge amount to nukes. Eco in favor of the blue team, units in favor of the blue team, air cover at this time for those Marauders. Just as those bulls lasted a really long time with that many Marauders. They didn't trade super well because they were massively outnumbered, but that was a strong.
You can see
bulls
at
are
this
strong.
point, I've decided that getting myself back up and running is unlikely to happen. So I've basically started eating the metal in front of me and sending it across to the blue player, who's getting Titans out.
Oh,
Because I figured that was a
he's
better
getting a
use
nuke
of.
out.
I mean, this nuke though, look where it's targeted. This player wants out. They have.
Oh wow, he's got the.
They called the vote. It didn't win. They weren't happy with it, so they decided to prevent themselves from playing the game. And there we go. Ironically, it was actually probably the best place that they could nuke because they were already dead, and it did take out the army on the front. But there is plenty more where that came from.
Yeah, this is game over. Now ticks into the back line for this
Actually,
player.
so I'm just looking at this. They know, looking at their view, they actually know that green is not that the green player behind you, Tank Tom, is not nuke defended. They could have nuked. They could have nuked the green player. I'm not saying it would have changed the game, but it's possible. I mean, I don't think it is actually with all these starlights and the Titan rolling through, but still, even if you're,
it was probably too late. But
yeah.
I will tell you this: that brown player did send a nuke over to the eco position, just a Hail Mary, and it did get intercepted. If that first nuke went over here, it may have taken out this nuke. Well, it may have taken this nuke out, and then that nuke wouldn't have hit the front line of the army that was sitting over here. That was a tough one. Very tough.
That was a tough one, Tank Tom. You got yourself a little destroyed on the front, and I reckon that the really big learning lesson behind this is just a tiny bit of macro practice in the background. Those compounding errors meant that you just didn't have quite what you needed when you needed it. And it's always a hard thing on the front line because you need you have to, on the front line, you have to do everything. You have to have units, you have to be building eco, you have to be microing, you have to be macroing. It's a very intense position. And that's where just the ability to identify the moments where you can go back and macro and to set longer than necessary build queues. Yes, it might not be efficient to get 40 wind, but if you put down a really long thing of wind, at least you're scaling your power.
You can see there on the graph.
It might not be
the wind just really not supplying the eco that you need as the second best player on the blue team. You want to be up there with a nice parabola curve in your energy produced. Just make sure it's always growing. Obviously, it doesn't count past this point where the Marauders got through, but before that, there was no hit on the eco. It needs to really jump up. Okay.
And I reckon that with a little bit of, with a couple of small macro decision changes, I reckon you would have had enough to defend that front line and hold here. So I reckon that you're doing well enough on your micro, and next it is time to work on that macro. And on that bombshell, thanks everyone for watching, and we will catch you in the next one.
See you guys.